what we wanted to talk about, and this is going to be pretty brief, so all of us are going to have to be brief in our comments because we have so much else to do today. I know all of us could probably talk for an hour each, at least, about what we've all been through. But I wanted to have one conversation, and in part, we're going to have two conversations like this today. And in part, these are two start conversations that we're going to continue to have informally, both just at lunch and, you know, for years ahead. But also, we're going to have a small group session later in the day where we're going to split up according to the age of the patient and chat about things we've been going through. So we wanted to kind of set up some of those issues really briefly. So what we're going to talk about right now is some of how things change as, you know, it's one thing I can say to have a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old who has this disease. It's very different to grow up with it and go into adolescence and then be an adult and have to go from pediatric care to adult care, leave home, etc. So that's what we wanted to talk about pretty briefly. And, you know, just to sort of set up these questions so that later when people split up, you know, we have some shared ideas to talk about. So it would be great if each of you could very briefly just give us a sense. I know how hard it is. I always say, you know, whenever anyone asks me what happened, I have trouble giving a brief version. So if you could just give us a quick rundown on your family, on your family's experience, and then we'll go from there. I'm going to start.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, I'm Carolyn. My son Matthew and I are here together today. Richard and I have 2 children. Raylan is 17 and Matt is 20. Matt was diagnosed with polyarteritis just before the age of 2. And it was when he was 8 years old where he was waking up and having a bad headache and really struggling. So I was bringing him some juice, and with that started choking. We went to our local hospital and was quickly transferred to Children's Hospital out of Winnipeg, where they were really puzzled in terms of trying to figure out what was going on and that he wasn't able to swallow. It was going into the OR where the anesthesiologist met with me just before I was sharing my concerns about all the headaches and things that he'd been having, where she was no longer comfortable putting Matt to sleep without a neurology consult. The neurologist ordered an MRI at that point, and they found that was in fact his 3rd stroke. The first one had been when he was admitted when he was about 3 years old. So anyhow, that was a huge turning point for us. Stroke was scary and overwhelming, and yet at the same time, seeing Matt so sick, it was almost a huge relief to have some sense of direction. From there, he went through a really rough stretch. And with each stroke, they would up the treatment plan in hope of putting things into remission. So by the age of 12, he had had 12 strokes, one of which was a bleed. And yeah, the biggest incident, I guess, being the one where he lost his ability to swallow. But yeah, he's done amazingly well. It was a tough journey of going through, like I say, different treatment plans till we came to the point where his rheumatologist started him on Remicade. That was when we started to see some signs of improvement, but had another stroke about 3 months into that treatment plan. But they were determined that, or really hoping that that wasn't an indicator of the treatment plan not working for him, so we stuck through with it. And he was doing much better till his 10th infusion. He had an anaphylactic reaction. So that put us back to the drawing board in terms of a treatment plan. After some negotiating, the medical team worked hard with our health care program to get approval for Humira. And since then, he's been stroke-free to the point where he was doing really well, and we started pulling back on Humira. And that's when he presented with more symptoms, more in his kidneys and those kinds of things. So it was obvious that we needed to go back on a treatment plan. So I guess, yeah, today our only worry is how long can you live on a treatment plan like Humira?
Hi, my name's Jill. I have 2 children with the disease. My son, Jake, had his first stroke at 8 years old. And at that time, we didn't know the cause of it. A couple other issues were happening with severe abdominal pain And then he had high blood pressure and a biopsy of a nodule, and we found out he had PAN. And then a year later, my daughter came down with the same issues, and the doctors thought that was impossible. They've never had siblings with the same diagnosis of PAN. So she was being treated, and then she emergently went in with a hypertensive crisis of a blood pressure of 250 over 200 in a 9-year-old body, and then had swelling on the brain, 2 seizures, ruptured her bowel, and then they took a foot out because it was all dead due to the vasculitis. She's doing great now. Both my kids have kidney damage. They're on adult doses of blood pressure medication. And through all this, I'm a medical person, nurse practitioner. I just couldn't take no for an answer and kept researching, and we got to the NIH where the diagnosis was made, and now have met all of you wonderful people to talk about this. And really, I guess my motto now is that my kids have gone from surviving to thriving, and I hope that continues.
Hello, my name is Thijs Laan. Currently, I am 24 years old. I had my first stroke when I was 3 years old. I don't remember a thing about it, but my parents said it was terrifying. Quickly, I went to the hospitals where the doctors thought it was an infection because they never had seen a stroke on such a young patient. I got my second stroke when I was 7 years old. I was at school when my mom came picked me up afterwards. When I sat on the couch, I became paralyzed at the right side of my body. Under the MRI, they saw the stroke I had and the stroke I had when I was 3 years old. My parents told me that I was a completely different child. I cursed and was very aggressive to my parents. I can only remember that I was in a revalidation center to regain my strength. I couldn't talk, walk, or jump. This I had to learn all over. After 3 months, my parents took me back home because I walked away from the center. I've had speech therapy to learn to cope with aphasia and to eat more. I had physiotherapy to learn how to walk and to go cycling. Play therapy to cope with my condition. The youth psychologist reconnected me with the social society. Because of that stroke, I got sent to special education. My wish was to become a doctor, but I had to adjust that wish to become a male nurse. I had no friends anymore, and I had to start all over. It was very hard to find my place in the classroom in my hometown, because almost everyone thought I wasn't ill, because I couldn't name the disease. They thought I was pathetic because they couldn't see it from the outside. Almost 6 years ago, I had my third stroke. When I skipped school, I started seeing double. My mom said that I had to eat because I didn't eat that much that couple years. So I did. It didn't help because I still had double vision. The next day I got sent to school by my mom, so I cycled my way through the snow to the bus stop. In the first hour at school, I got an enormous headache. Reading was impossible, so I went to the ER of the hospital. They had a CAT scan and MRI and a lumbar puncture, and it was clear that I had a stroke in my brainstem. When I was home, it became clear to me that all my friends had left me because I didn't fit in the friendship with my diseases. I had to start all over with my driving lessons because I couldn't drive according to the law. I had to do my last year of school again because I was behind on my schoolwork, and I felt the danger lurking behind me of getting another stroke for many years. Didn't help me either. The worst feeling was 3 years ago when I was in Brazil with a group of people for the World Youth Day for 2 weeks. The first day I saw red spots on my lower legs. I knew it had to be vasculitis because I had it before. The doctors thought it was polyarthritis nodosa, but they couldn't figure out where it came from. So they sent me to Utrecht, and there they sent DNA to a hospital here in America. After a short period of 3 months, it came clear that it was DADA2. First I got to use prednisone, for there was no medication available for the disease. But thankfully, I could stop that medication. The doctor would prescribe me with Inaugural. I'm really glad that I could use Inaugural, because I am more alive now than I was before. I have more strength in my body and more appetite than I ever had. In this short story, I weighed 60 kilos at the border of anorexia. I have learned that I am strong because I survived, but I have also accepted my vulnerability. I have learned only to focus on what's important in life. I am different than I was. I will never be the same again. And by that discovery, I've become who I am today. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Adela. I'm 24, actually in grad school, never had a stroke. Kind of remarkable that I even got to the NIH in the first place. In 2009, when I was 17, I was graduating, my last year of high school, about to go to college, right? They diagnosed me with hypertension. And I was, pediatric cases, I'm skinny, and it's like I was 115 pounds, how could I be hypertensive? Went through a whole battery of tests. And this is, after years. I mean, I had fevers when I was 2. I had been in and out of doctors since I was 10. When I was 13, folks told me that, I had the top of the line rheumatologist in LA, and they're like, this is not a life-threatening disease, you're okay. Basically went through all these different tests, went through an angiogram, and they discovered that I really did have polyarteritis nodosa, or that, at least that's what they thought at the time. They didn't think I was the acute case. They thought I was a chronic case. I definitely had nodules. Some of you might have heard of erythema nodosum. That's what they thought I had a long time ago. Then they realized it was actually cutaneous pan, and then it went on to all these different things, right? Biopsy after biopsy, drug after drug. No one really knew what was happening. The worst part, I will say, is you go through finals week, and especially at engineering college, a couple weeks of sleeping less than 6 hours a night, you start to develop rashes, you start to develop joint pains, you basically are like, why did I age 30 years overnight? I have to call my doctor and say, I don't care, give me the prednisone because I just need to get through for the next 2 weeks. So for those of you who hope to go to college one day, I can tell you all about that. At the same time, I grew up in LA, I moved to Boston, right? So I moved 3,000 miles away, much to the chagrin of my mother. I mean, my mother was really like, you're gonna move that far away? And I was like, I can have 4 years to be anywhere I want, right? Still out on the East Coast, haven't gone home. And it's been really challenging actually to find the right doctor. I will say that pediatric physicians are very warm and caring people, and then you go into the adult world and people are just like, I have 100 patients I have to see today, I don't really care about your case. Though they have actually cared about my case because it's so random, they're just like, oh, can we do this test on you? Wait, we can write a paper about you. Oh, it's like, yeah, I really want to be in a textbook. That's my goal. I guess all in all, I actually started at the NIH about a little less than a year ago, and it's been pretty remarkable I was out here for Thanksgiving break. I was out here for spring break. I'm pretty sure like almost every break I'm gonna have, it's like every vacation I'll just be saying I'm going to DC for the rest of my life. And at least it's got great museums. But if you're thinking about, really it was when I was 22, and it was my senior year of college, and I'd gone home for winter break, and I was seeing physicians in LA because I'd given up on people in Boston, and they wanted to do repeat MR angiogram. Did that, and they were like, "Oh, you have inflammation in your celiac artery. Your labs came back abnormal. We have to start you on prednisone right away. We're gonna start you on Rituxan." And then, went back to Boston, started Rituxan. They said, "Oh, don't get sick." And I was like, I live in a dorm. How do I not get sick? Like, this is just impossible, right? And really at that point, I had gotten sick about 6 months after my final dose of Rituxan, and they had warned me about that. And at that point, I asked the doctors, and I said, "How do you know that I'm on the right thing? How do you know what's actually wrong?" And that's when as an engineer, I have some bio training, right? And I was thinking about it, and I was like, okay, your immune system is there to support you, and if you suppress your immune system for decades, as will happen for many of us, what happens, right? Because at that point, do you die because of the drug that they put you on, or do you die because of the disease that you have? And no one can answer my question, so I basically went off treatment, and went off treatment for a whole year. I basically refused everything. Even when I came to the NIH, they wanted to give me Enbrel, and I was like, no, I don't want to be on anything. I want to leave drug-free, right? And that didn't happen. But I think it's when you think about when Amanda was saying some people were just born at the wrong time, it's kind of really amazing to be at this point where genetics and understanding of proteins and enzymes is really coming into play, and being here where, hey, now they can run an exome sequence, right, and find out what the mutations and what the problems might be. So that's really sort of my story.
Thank you all so much. We have a little bit more time, so I'd love to just follow up on a couple of these things. I'd love to talk a little bit more about that switch from pediatrics to adult care, because that's something that is closer and further away for some of us, but it's something I think we all think about. Do you have anything you want to add about that?
I guess for us, I was scared silly of the concept because Matt's situation was so unique. Our team on the pediatric side had really grown with us. They became our safe place in a big way. They were our family. And so I feared the day of needing to do the transition to the adult side and what that would look like. Some of it's been amazing. Some of it's been a real stretch and grow. I think the biggest piece has been communication. Sometimes it's been me holding back when I feel like we're not on the same page with the doctors, and walking away and giving it some space and time and going back and asking questions when I'm not as emotionally caught up in the situation. But we haven't had any major hurdles to work through with the new team at this point yet. So I'm thankful that things have kind of been at bay in terms of where his health is at. So we've been able to slowly develop those relationships.
Great.
Thank you.
And while you have the mic, since you have the mic, I'd love to hear from you about a little bit more of that earlier side of, sort of how your family has adapted as your kids have gone from being little kids to going into adolescence and starting to go into adolescence.
It's been interesting, and I think like Adela had said, that once you start coming into adolescence, the kids are becoming in their own person.
Right.
And my kids have handled this very well. So at 8 and 9 being diagnosed, Jake is now 15, my daughter's 12. Knowing that they have to take these medications, understanding that they have this disease, and probably my fault saying if you don't take your medicine, there's catastrophic consequences to this. And I want them to understand that, and I think they do. The other thing for my kids, they're very open about their issues, talking with other kids, open with their teachers, being able to do homework and get what they need done like their other friends and not feeling too different. The other thing was the medicines, realizing that, yes, this is lifelong. I think they had hoped they wouldn't have to take blood pressure medication anymore, but the kidney damage is done, so they have to stay on that. And then both kids, Jake transitioned to Humira last year. My daughter was just told to do it this year for outgrowing. You could see it in their markers, and my daughter was not happy that she has to switch to Humira. I'm not sure why, but maybe it's because her brother takes it and she doesn't want to be like him. She had her own, way of doing things, but it can be a challenge. There's times that they just rebel and don't want to have to deal with this, in the morning, and me saying, take your medicine, and did you take your medicine? Brush your teeth, take your medicine. So, and they could probably speak more to it with you guys later. They're very open. Anything else?
That's good.
Okay.
So, I guess from you two, I'd love to hear what, going through all of this for such a long time without a diagnosis and having to struggle with a lot of things, but now, you're both adults out on your own and really thriving. And I would love to hear what you think, what you found most helpful in kind of getting, aside from Enbrel and other drugs, just sort of in terms of the support you've found in, what have you found most useful to you in kind of bringing, having the strength to keep going and be where you are? You want to go first?
My parents. My parents helped me and supported me, and they pushed me towards sports and friends and clubs. That's what really helped me. The doctors helped me, but my parents helped me the most.
Try to beat that one. She thinks the same thing, but we'll.
It's true. I will say that my whole family, my sister's 15 years older than me. She, I believe, is a carrier. We haven't actually done a full exome sequence on her either. But my sister and my two parents have really been very helpful. And beyond that, I actually have my own sort of support structure out in Boston. I have sort of my pseudo parents who are, one of my professors practically adopted me. And he and his wife have been pretty much like family at this point. His wife is the one who comes with me to the NIH when I come for my visits. I think for me, a lot of it has been finding comfort in knowing about the science and the fact that I'm a patient and I can actually talk to some of these folks who work in the field, because Boston's kind of the hub of a lot of pharma companies. It's been really nice, actually, because I can reach out and I can find people and I can ask them about the science and talk to them about, where are we moving forwards. So at this point, it's sort of the fact that I know that I can make a difference in terms of finding resources to make sure that we have a better solution. But in terms of growing up and dealing with this, it was rough. There were lots of highs and there are lots of lows, right? It's sort of like every time you hear that there's a new drug that you can try, it's sort of like the first couple times it's like, oh, well, this sounds awesome. Like, let's try this, right? And then after a while, it's like, this is not good news that you're telling me, right? And at that point, it's really the doctors and the physicians. The team that you get of people will make a huge impact, especially transitioning over from pediatric care, where I had some of the most caring people who had actually, were brilliant and really wanted to make sure that I was fine for the rest of my life. And then adult care was very different. The questions were very different. Their assumptions were very different. And I think that it makes a big difference in terms of the attitude that you get from your physicians is very, very important.
Great. Thank you all so much. And there'll be lots more time to talk about these issues later.